All right, welcome to the Black Ribbon Warrior podcast. This is your host Lee and his lovely wife Tanya, or we call her the wife. So this podcast, we're going to start talking about our journey and life-changing events of metastatic melanoma cancer. Our journey started in, well, I guess it would be December of 2020. And what we found was an inflamed lymph node under my left arm. And I went brain dead.
Well, you found it. You called me. I was on vacation with a friend of mine, and you called and said, I have this knot under my arm. I think I pulled a muscle.
Yep. So at the job I was doing, we had to pull a big heavy tote down a conveyor belt or rollers, and I did that, and I thought I pulled a muscle, and that's when I first noticed it. So I was like, ow. And I'm feeling it, and I'm like, wow, what is that? And at the time, it was only like a knot. And about 2 weeks later, about a week later, I got really, really sick. And
you were sick that night. I came home. You had a fever, and you were tired, and you had a headache. And because COVID was rampant, because it was 2020, I said, go upstairs. And you stayed upstairs for 2 weeks.
And then I tested positive, and...
Wait.
No, wait, I didn't test.
You didn't test. You tested negative.
I tested
3 times.
Tested negative 3 times for COVID, but I was really sick, so I was laid out of work for about 2 weeks anyway. And
everyone thought the test was wrong.
Yep.
Because you had all the symptoms of COVID, but you kept coming back negative. And given that everybody was only talking about COVID, they didn't go any further with this lymph node. They thought it was just your body fighting off an infection, and it was manifesting inside this lymph node, and it would get better.
Yep. And I talked to a couple people, and they said, oh, well, sometimes your lymph nodes, when you're fighting an infection, will swell up and do that, and so it's probably nothing to worry about. And we were like, okay. Fast forward to March of 2021.
You went to the doctor for standard checkup.
Because I'm type 2 diabetic, so I went in just for the random checkup, and I mentioned to my doctor about it, and by this time it had gotten up to about the size of a tennis ball, and her eyes got real big, and she said, like, oh shit, and
let's get this checked.
She wanted to get it checked, so she ordered a ultrasound.
Yep.
And somewhere between then and July, the ultrasound, they said that they tried to call and schedule, but I never got a call. So
no one got a phone call. I think it just got missed. And at the time, everything that was not a stat order wasn't really getting handled because it was still COVID. So
that ultrasound got missed. And as far as symptoms from then, I started feeling kind of like you were drunk without the drunk feeling. Just kind of like your balance was a little off. You're starting to move a little slower.
You're always tired. And yep. I couldn't figure out why you were so tired, because nothing had changed. We thought nothing had changed. You recovered. You had your energy back. I mean, as far as the December issue, you weren't complaining of anything. No headache, no sickness. But you went to work. And I was really... And you went to bed.
I was really watching my sugar levels, because normally when my sugar's high and out of control, then I get really tired. So I was really paying attention to my sugar levels, and wasn't really eating right, because my numbers were a little higher than normal. So I was eating to my numbers, which is not always the best thing to do. And I dropped probably about 25 pounds or so, and a couple of guys at work had noticed, man, you're slimming down, and I was like, I'm not trying, I'm just eating to what my numbers tell me, and so then we get into June, and we're back about the ultrasound, and I said, hey, it hadn't happened. This was with the family doctor on the next 3-month checkup for the diabetes. I said it hadn't happened, so she looked into it and she said, "Well, they said they contacted you, but you didn't answer, whatever." And I said, "Well, whatever." Anyway, it didn't happen, so she pushed it through and scheduled that.
Yeah, that was going to be like in July. We were going home. We were going back to Ohio for a memorial kind of service, and the holiday. Your family does a really big holiday on July 4th, so we were going to go there, and we actually left that like a day early so we could come back for your ultrasound.
Yep, and I really noticed the problem. Like, wasn't really so much driving, because it was kind of like driving was like driving intoxicated without any kind of buzz or alcohol at all.
Mind you, he didn't share any of this with me at this time.
No, because I was, I'm a guy born and raised in a cornfield, so we don't talk about health and anything that makes us look weaker than what we are. So
we got your ultrasound done, and
so on the way up to Ohio, I'm noticing a lot more confusion, and I'm thinking it's more like concussion related, because we were also still in this. The NFL was doing a lot of concussion protocol stuff, and it was in the news, and it was.
You had just like knocked your head at work or something too.
Yeah.
Like it was a lot of things going on.
So the thought of like this is just the results of concussions there, because I'm forgetting stuff. Like I'm walking into a room not knowing what's going on, why I'm there. I'm at work and just staring off into space and just not even like what's the word? Not cognitive, but cognitive. Not really knowing what's going on.
Well, and it's kind of important to know that you often miss little things anyway. Like there are a lot of times I'm like, I tell you something and you're like, you didn't tell me that, and we go through the process. You're like, oh wait, maybe you did tell me that. So some of that wasn't so far out of your norm.
And that's also marriage will do that. So.
I hear you. Keep talking. Keep talking. But it wasn't enough yet for me to know something was really wrong. I just thought you had an off day, or you were tired, or you were moody, because you did become a lot more moody during this time.
And a lot of it was confusion, because I didn't know what was going on, and I didn't want to say there's something going on.
Which makes it very hard as your spouse to figure out, why is he acting this way, because you wouldn't cue me in at that point.
So we get an 8 hours back to Ohio, and we go to our 4th of July event, and which was a celebration of life and a 4th of July party that the family puts on every year. And I walk in, I see a few people, and one young lady, I looked her dead in her eye, and like we had eye contact for I don't know, 3-5 seconds, and it didn't register that that's who she was. I had no, like, it was just like I didn't know her. And then like an hour later, she's like, "Hey," I was like, "Hey, what are you doing? When did you get here?" She's like, "I've been here the whole time." Like that for me was like a big clue that.
And this was one of his cousins. This wasn't some acquaintance or neighbor of a neighbor or anything like that.
Yep. This young lady, I've followed her, well, since she was itty bitty, and we'd keep in contact and talk here and there and whatnot. So it was really big that it bothered me that I didn't recognize her, and of course I didn't say anything because at the time I didn't know what was going on. But I had no idea who she was, and that kind of bothered me. It just seemed like there was a lot going on, getting confused a lot, and
confused, short-tempered, you name it. So he came home, and he had the ultrasound done.
Yep. So mid-July we did the ultrasound.
It was earlier than that, but anyway, it was beginning of July we did your ultrasound, and this is kind of my realm. You know, I work in the medical field. I know what to expect when I see a result. I know how to read some of the imaging. I mean, I know what to look for. And I got his results, and I was like, there's no findings. They told me something was there. They told me what size it was, where it was, gave me some information about it as far as, you know, blood flow and things like that. But there was no page of findings, and I thought that was really odd. And I was actually at work, and I told my coworker, I said, hey, can you look at this? And she said, yeah. She looked at it, and she's like, okay, so something's there, but what is it? And there was no extra page. And that set off some alarms for me, because why wouldn't you just tell me what it was unless it was something important? You know, and we waited. And the next day we got the phone call from your doctor, or not even a phone call. I think we got a message on your online chart. And she still didn't say what it was.
She said we had to go for more testing and go see an oncologist.
We were seeing an oncologist. And I sent her a message back, and I said, why are we going to oncology? What did you see? And she said, I think it's just best we see oncology. And frankly, that just pissed me off. Not that we had to see oncology, but we're asking you, what did you see? And they wouldn't tell me. And so I knew they just didn't send us to oncology for fun. There was a reason we were going to oncology. And that, combined with the fact we couldn't have findings, told me something was going on. But I couldn't get to, oh, he has cancer. I couldn't get there yet. But I knew when I called your oncologist's office to make that appointment, I was driving downtown, and I called them, and I just cried. I said, you got to give me a minute. I can't make this appointment yet. You just got to give me a minute. You know, and so we made the appointment, and we went.
And nice lady.
Very nice lady.
Very nice lady. She still wasn't sure what it was. Their immediate thought was just because it's in the lymph node that it was non-Hodgkin's, but they had to do a biopsy on it and see what it was.
But it was funny, even at that appointment, you were still it's an infection. And I'm like, Lee, she did not refer to you as saying, like, we don't think it's cancer, but we're going to check this. She was like, we're going to do this, and we're going to see if this is non-Hodgkin's or if this is melanoma. I think it's probably going to come back non-Hodgkin's. And you kept going, it's an infection. It's an infection.
And
I just have a cold. It's an infection.
In my brain and train of thought was, this is an infection that's spreading. Which, I mean, I guess it is.
It is an infection, but not like the type you were thinking. You were thinking some antibiotics, and we're going to clear you out.
So I was thinking it was just an infection or in a, concussion that I didn't remember having. So, which, doing all the dumb stuff I've done, very well could have been a concussion.
And while he was doing that, I was tearing apart that lab report, because after we saw that oncologist, it released the findings. She released the rest, the last two sentences of that lab report. So I was Googling all of the information in this lab report to tell me what this was, because I knew, as my job, I had to know what I could know about it. I had to be prepared to not know everything about it, but accept what was happening, because he wasn't accepting what was happening. He was still very stuck in, it's an infection, it's not cancer, it's an infection. They sent me here out of precaution, it's an infection. And I called, like, my sister, and I called my best friends, and I said, this is the problem. He's not accepting that we're in oncology, and that we don't go to oncology for an infection.
at this point, I was just along for the ride. Like my mental was, I was checked out. Not in denial, but just cognitively, I was losing it.
I think going to work and coming home, like driving and going to work, was really all you could handle.
Yep.
So I think any other comprehension of any other things were something you just couldn't do.
Yep. It was. I look back now, and it's amazing that, I mean, because you were just living, and it was, this is my job, and this is all I've got to do is get to work safely, which I was working. I just transitioned from night shift to second shift, and so during the day it wasn't so bad, but coming home at night, 11:30 at night. I mean, it's dark. The
You're
headlights,
tired.
the headlights messed with me. I was exhausted just from 8 hours of working, and it was like it was seriously like being completely tore up from the floor down and driving without any buzz or any alcohol at all. It was, some days I was like, man, I don't even know how I made it home because I don't remember the drive.
Right.
And it's a 30-minute drive from where my job was to home. So that was kind of scary, and some nights were worse than others. And so I wasn't accepting or really even thinking about anything other than the task at hand.
Right.
So then,
So we had to, after we met with the oncology, she ordered a PET scan and an appointment with the surgeon because we had to do a biopsy. We had to see what this thing was under his arm, what kind of cancer it was. We had to.
well, the one surgeon they sent us to, the older fella.
Yeah. He's the one who did your biopsy.
Yep, and he talked about, well, we could remove it, go through the surgery and get it removed, but it was so big. I mean, by this time we're talking it's the size of a softball.
Well, yeah, he could lift his arm up over his head, and if I put my palm, and I don't have huge hands, but I mean, when you think this thing is sticking out of your body, it would fill my entire palm.
Yeah, we're talking like a softball size.
It was humongous.
And
it didn't hurt necessarily.
No.
It was just bothersome.
Yep.
So I guess that's a bonus that it didn't hurt.
So he was talking about he could do surgery and remove it, but it would be such a pain because of the size that you'd have to cut into muscle tissue and all this stuff to get it to it.
And you had blood flow. So you had like some veins and stuff that were going into this thing.
Yep.
It was getting a good blood supply. So that with all the nerves and everything else that's under your arm, they're like, oh, we don't know if we can cut it out.
So he ordered the biopsy, and
but that appointment though, I don't know if you remember this or if you had like tuned out. He was like, chances are what's going to happen is we're going to do a biopsy, then you're going to come back to see me, we're going to put a port in, you're going to do a few rounds of chemo, you're going to lose your hair, and you're going to be fine. And you were like, hey, we're going to do what? And I'm like, so is this cancer? Like, are we really dealing with cancer? Because up to this point, nobody said the word yet.
Right.
They haven't said you have cancer. So it felt like we went from one doctor to get a piece of the puzzle to the next doctor who gave us a little bit more of a nugget to another doctor who gave us a little bit more information. But nobody had said, you, sir, have cancer. You're now a cancer patient. That never happened. Even after the PET scan and the biopsy, that didn't happen for another month or so.
Yeah.
Nobody used those words with us. We knew the words. We read the reports. We did all of the critical thinking about everything going on, that we knew what it was as far as cancer. But no doctor had said to us that it was cancer.
And, at that point, that was when I kind of like, I tuned into chemo, and then I was like, whoa, what are you talking about? And he said, oh, well, we're looking at non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And we were like, oh, shit.
So we left there. We had the PET scan. We left there. We did, and we were happy. We got the PET scan results back, and this would have been the beginning of August. We got the PET scan results back, and it said, "Yep, the only spot's under the arm." So.
Well, they also did the CT scan.
Yes, but the only spot was under the arms.
That was all that they found. Yeah.
So, given that it was under the arm, it makes sense that it would have been a lymphoma because it started in the lymph nodes. So we're like, okay, we were waiting for the biopsy to come back. I'm not a good waiter.
No, you're not.
So I checked the portal 2-3 times a day. I called the office. Hey, just seeing if we got results in. Just seeing if we got results in, because we couldn't do anything until we got these results in. And I'm a kind of one of those people, if I know something's wrong, let's attack it head first, and we're not going to wait. We're going to get going on this so that we can get the best result. And nobody could give me the information that we needed to do that.
And even though this was like weeks and weeks later and you don't know what's going on, life still happens. And I still, went to work not knowing what's going on. And I was working, 40 to 50 hours a week and not knowing what's going on. So you got that stress plus the actual cognitive and motor skills that are declining.
Well, we still were parents of 3 children.
Yep.
We were still doing the kid stuff and, celebrating, our oldest daughter's job, getting our middle daughter ready for her senior year of high school. Life didn't stop.
It didn't slow down. It
No.
just, for me, it kind of paused because I wasn't really aware of a lot of stuff.
And, we did a lot of this in secret from the girls, not because we wanted to keep it a secret, but I know our girls, that if we said, they're looking at this and this, those girls are smart enough to do some research.
Which
and
they
to
did.
Figure out what they think it is and how it's going to work and what prognoses are. And you don't look at that on the internet. It's terrifying when you look at any cancer diagnosis and prognosis on the internet. So before we armed them with this information, we wanted to have the right information. So they knew what the plan was, they knew what we were doing, they knew the details.
But in that, we never lied to them.
No.
We never kept anything from them. They said, hey, how was your appointment? What did they find? We're like, we don't know what they found because we really didn't know.
We didn't know. We had ideas, we had thoughts, but we told them we're having more tests done. They're going to do a biopsy of this. They're going to find out what it is. Then we'll know what we have to do about it. But we just wanted to make sure we gave them the right information and not incorrect information. I mean, Sydney was in school. She was in school for her job, so she couldn't leave there, and I didn't want to upset her unduly. And I'm not going to tell one of the girls without telling all of the girls because they talk. So I didn't want one to hear it from somebody who wasn't us.
Yep. That was kind of tough trying to, when you don't know yourself, trying to tell another loved one what's going on.
I mean, that's hard. They're watching it and they're seeing that dad's acting weird and that dad's moody and dad's grumpy, and in turn it makes mom moody and mom grumpy, and
because it changes the whole dynamic of the house. I mean, the aura around the house changes. Yes. And everybody's on edge because nobody knows anything.
Nobody knows anything.
And it makes it even worse, and everybody's on high alert because, they want to know, but we can't tell them because we don't know. And so then we get into, so we did the biopsy on the lymph node, and that came back that it was cancerous. So then
But we were still waiting. We still don't know if it's lymphoma.
Yeah, they don't know
melanoma.
what kind.
We don't know anything other than it is malignant. That is the only thing we knew.
So that, for me, that was like the icing on the cake. Now it was kind of like getting hit by a brick. Like you're like, oh shit, now I have cancer. Okay. What kind? I don't know. Does it matter? At that point, it didn't. And some of the guys at work were pretty. Um, they were sharing some of the stories of people they know that are currently battling or have successfully beat it. Um, and there was a lot of support.
And I think at this point, once they came back malignant, we told the girls that that your dad had cancer, or that you have cancer, and at that time they still were thinking it was more lymphoma. So like, what they think from our first consultation with that oncologist and the surgeon was basically he'll likely go through chemo, he'll get some medicines that can make him really sick for a bit, but after his chemo he should be fine. This is really treatable. This isn't anything to be really worried about. It's only in one spot. So, when you look at how they grade cancer, and I won't get really into like depth with this, but when they grade cancer, if it starts in one location and it stays there, that's like a level 1, grade 1, stage 1. If it goes like on the same side of the body for certain cancers as the initial tumor, it's like a stage 2, and blah, blah, blah. Well, because there's only one spot, they were thinking, oh, this is an early stage lymphoma. This is great news. We don't find it anywhere else. It hasn't crossed midline. It hasn't traveled to a remote location on his body. So we have probably stage 1, maybe stage 2 because it's so large, but it's only one location, super treatable.
And the mindset that I was having was I was completely zoning out. It was you're kind of like what you would think of the ADD kid that they can't concentrate and focus on anything. So I'd be like, oh shit, I have cancer. Oh damn. And then it would be quiet like that.
Yeah.
All
That's
the
how
time.
life's become with you.
And yeah, it's gotten better, I think, but since we've been through all the treatments and everything, but I mean, at that point I was wore out. I was moving like
you aged overnight. Your body,
my mobility
yes,
went to a 90-year-old man.
He was shuffling. He couldn't move fast.
Think about a turtle in Alaska. That's about the way I was moving, was a turtle in Alaska. It was.
You couldn't comprehend. Like, so he had been working, as we said, up until this point, and it was mid-August, and our microwave broke. And I told the kids, hey, the microwave broke. Like, you could heat something up for 5 minutes, and it wasn't any hotter than it was when you put it in the first time. And I said, hey, the microwave's broken. He said, okay. And he went up and he started pushing buttons. No order. He wanted to heat something up. It wasn't even the right order. It wasn't the right buttons. It was button, button, button. He'd open and shut the door, hit some more buttons. He did this like 3 or 4 times, and I kept telling him, it's broke. It's not going to work. It's broke. And he finally looked at me. He said, did you know the microwave was broke? Yeah. And he said, okay, well, I got to go to work. I said, are you sure you feel good? You feel okay? Yep. I'm going to go to work. And I knew in my heart of hearts he was going to be home. And sure enough, he walks back into his house about 4 hours later. And he said, I don't feel good. And he sat down in the living room. We had an air mattress pulled out. The kids were laying on the air mattress watching TV through the summer and things like that. We're fine with it. He sat there and he laid back and he said, I really don't feel well.
And so I went to work, and I'd walked out to the production floor, and supervisor looked at me. He said, you all right? And I said, yeah. He goes, no, you ain't. Go sit up in the break room, get a cup of coffee, and do not move.
I'm so sorry.
And he said, get up there in the break room and don't move. Don't worry about your job. Do that. So I went up there and I sat for a little while and I drank some coffee. I was still completely out of it. At this point, cognitively, zoning out left and right, trying to play solitaire on my phone, which the phone won more times than not. So finally, I said, "Look, dude, I'm really out of it. I'm going to go home." And he asked if I needed a ride or something. And I said, "No, I'll be all right."
I remember telling you that day, like, if you don't feel like you can come home, okay, call me. I'll come get you.
But I'm a stubborn guy, and so we made it. I made it home, and I walked indoors. She said, "What's wrong?" I said, "I'm just wore out. I need to rest." And I sat down on the air mattress. I took a nap, which at the time was unheard of. And evidently, she made a few phone calls.
I made phone calls. I called the oncology team. I called his cousin, who's a nurse, and knew everything step by step of where we were in this. And they all said, take him to the hospital. I said, okay.
Yep. So my cousin, she's a nurse at the Cancer Society and
Cancer Treatment Centers.
Cancer Treatment Center.
You always say Cancer Society, but that's not correct.
Cancer Treatment Centers in Atlanta.
In Noonan.
Noonan, Georgia, just south of Atlanta. But so whenever she says, "Get your ass to the hospital," you get your ass to the hospital.
He listens to her much better than he listens to me.
Yes. And so we went in. We went to the ER and had to check in. And of course, they had the one half was COVID patients, and the other half is whatever else patients.
Which is very funny now because there's no divider. It wasn't like we weren't breathing the same air or anything.
Yeah, you walked in the ER door and it was like you go to the left, and there's your COVID patients. You go to the right, there's your regular patients. Mm-hmm. So they took the time checking us in, and they called me back for blood work.
You did blood work and you did a CAT scan.
Then they pulled me back out to the lobby. Then a little while later they pulled me back in for a CAT scan.
Put you back in the lobby.
Then I was back in the lobby, and when I'm walking, I mean it's like a 90-year-old cripple trying to walk. It was bad.
Very slow.
Real cognitive was still real out of it. Really zoned out.
Just more shuffling than effective walking. And
so
after the last test, they said, okay, well, come with us. We have your room. Okay, so we went in the room. They hooked you up on monitors and did all the stuff they did. And not long after that, the nurse comes in and says, okay, we're going to start this medicine. And again, my spidey senses perked up, and I said, whoa, what's this medicine for? And they said, for seizures. For what? He doesn't have seizures. He's never had seizures. So ding, ding, ding. Here's another clue. There's another clue for the testing. Seizure activity is a brain, issue. It's neural. So I'm like, okay, well, something popped up on the CAT scan or the MRI, because why would they be giving him seizure medicine? And I think maybe 5 minutes after they checked and double checked, and yep, that's what the doctors ordered, the little ER doctor came in and said, hey, did you know about this?
So they found in the CT scan that the initial scan that we had done, the oncologist had read a shadow in the brain. Well, this young fella in the ER got to really diving into the scan, and determined that it was not a shadow, that it was actually a ping pong ball sized tumor in my brain. So when all this started and we were trying to talk about the cancers and stuff, and I said, well, at least it's not in my brain. Fast forward about a month and a half later from saying that, and this little fella comes in and says it's in the brain.
So are you telling me right now that you manifested this?
I don't know.
You threw it out in the world and
But boom. I looked at my wife and I said, well, shit.
Yeah.
And that was it. And of course her mood completely changed, which you can understand. But I zoned out and I was just like, damn.
Well, now I knew that it wasn't just an easy, let's get some chemo and go.
So now we went from...
Now we're in two places, not connected.
Then we went from possibly non-Hodgkin's to definitely melanoma.
Well, no, we didn't even know. No, at that time, Lee, you didn't know. They were still like, your brain surgeon came in, your neurosurgeon came in, and he said, what kind of cancer does he have? And I said, they think it's non-Hodgkin's, but we don't have a biopsy back. And he's like, well, if it's non-Hodgkin's, we can do this, this, and this, and it would most likely shrink that brain tumor. But if it's melanoma, we have to treat this completely different.
Right.
When was the biopsy? Who did the biopsy? We need those results. And this was, mind you, like 3 o'clock in the morning or something ridiculous.
Yeah, because the biopsy was like a week prior.
Easily 2 to 2.5 weeks prior. I feel like...
It was in early August that we did the biopsy of the lymph node, and then the 17th, August 17th is when we went into the ER.
All of this other stuff happened. So
we're talking a week or two, and they hadn't been read yet.
So what we were waiting, they kept you on this medicine, and they came in a couple times to check on you, and we were still having to process, okay, now it's a brain tumor and a lymph node tumor. They thought they were the same type of cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And, we had to make a couple phone calls. Like we called his dad, we called my sister, and shared, here's an update. But we're still waiting. We still don't know anything. We don't know how we're going to treat it. We don't know what anything looks like.
And there was no me dialing the phone. There was no, even though I got everybody on contacts, I wasn't doing that. Cognitively, I didn't have it. So I just gave the wife...
And emotionally, I don't think you had it, because your worst fear kind of came true with that it was in the brain.
So I was still in Twilight Zone shock. And
I think we stayed in that Twilight Zone shock for a little while, but...
So I gave her my phone, and I said, call whoever you need to call. The numbers are all in there. Mm-hmm. And I didn't even... I think the TV was on in the room, but I don't know.
I don't remember.
I just...
It was...
I was out of it.
It was the least of my concern.
And she went in the bathroom, and she had both phones, and she would call one and have the other one ready to dial, so she could just back and forth.
Just to let the family know right now, like our immediate family, because we didn't know anything still. So we made it through that night. I had to get the kids to school, and the kids still had school. We still had to do that kind of stuff. So I'd take them to school, and then I'd go back and sit with him at the hospital. I did what I could do. And I remember, I called your surgeon, and I'm sure, and I feel sorry now for my tone with the receptionist, that I basically just said, listen, here's the deal. He's in the ER right now. We don't know what's wrong. They found a brain tumor. I need you to find those results. Don't tell me you don't have them. You need to go find them. And she said, I'll have the doctor call you. And the doctor called me.
And this is on the 18th.
This is the 18th. The doctor finally called me back. I was in the pickup line to pick up our youngest from school. And he said, listen, basically, I'm sure he was a lot more eloquent, but he said, listen, I don't have the results. When I get them, I will let you know. And I said, do you understand what I'm telling you when I tell you they found a brain tumor, they don't know how to proceed, we don't know anything until those results come back? And he said, well, I can't rush them. And in this conversation, I hear like some scuffling in his background, and there's a female voice saying, "Hold on, I got him, I just got him, I just got him." And he said, "Okay, let me look at him." And he was reading them with me on the phone. And he said, "Oh my gosh, it's melanoma," which means the brain tumor is also melanoma, which puts this at metastatic melanoma stage 4. I need to call the hospital. What hospital is he in? So I gave him the hospital information. I gave him the surgeon information. The neurosurgeon who was talking to us, I gave everything I had. And he said, "Okay, well, I'm going to call them right now." And I did the stupid thing that I know not to do. And I Googled what that meant. And the result was terrifying. And so I called my sister and I said, "They got the biopsy back. This is what it is." And you hear her take her breath in. And I said, "I need you to tell me something funny right now, because I got to get the youngest from school. She's getting ready to get in the car." And she was like, I got nothing. I got nothing." And I said, "Well, you need to find something." And I got our youngest daughter in the car, and I shoved some things away the best I could. And I got home and I waited to tell the girls what I knew. I said, "Let's go to dinner. Let me take you guys to dinner. I know I've been busy with Dad. Dad's still in the hospital. He's not coming home today. Let me take you to dinner." And I told them as they were eating wings at this little restaurant in town. I let them choose. It sounds crazy now that I thought this was the best option, but I thought, when someone's hurting, you feed them. When bad things happen, you feed them. So I'll feed them. And I'll tell them what we knew. And then I had to call the oldest daughter and tell her what we knew.
And the whole time I'm sitting in the hospital, back in the little room, and I have no idea what's going on. I think HGTV was the only channel that came in.
Well, now I'm very grateful, because I took the girls home, and I was back on my way to see you, to go back to the hospital. They said, "Mom, please go just sit with Dad. We're fine. We're going to be okay." And I went back to the hospital, but on my way, the first oncologist we met with called me. And she said, "We have the results." And I said, "I know." And she started to explain all of the things. That it's metastatic melanoma stage 4. Any stage 4 is considered metastatic. Okay, what do we do?
But it was stage 4 because it went not only in the lymph node, but it also traveled to the brain.
Yeah, it moved from a primary location again.
Yeah.
Because now that it's melanoma, the lymph node itself was a remote location, because you had no skin lesion. We didn't have a skin lesion. There was nothing that was suspicious on his skin anywhere. So that would have been the primary spot.
He said later on we found out, when we talked to the one oncologist we're into now, that it could have been a mole that had over time fallen off.
Or it could have been
whatever.
Something that was removed years ago, but one little cell was left.
Yeah.
They couldn't really tell. But during that conversation with the first oncologist, she told me kind of what to expect and who I would be meeting and what the process was, and that she was going to transfer our care to another oncologist who specializes in melanoma. Okay. I mean, what do you say? You went from your fairly healthy husband to this other version of your husband who now has to have radiation therapy, and he has that oncologist, and he has a new oncologist, and he has a neurosurgeon, and that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg with what we found that we needed. So I'm processing, okay, as much as I can. Okay. I didn't have the balls in me to say what's the prognosis. I just couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to know. And I'm like, okay, so you're going to tell me we're going to meet with this guy and this guy and this guy, and they're going to take it from here, and you're going to see us tomorrow, and you were setting everything up. Okay. And I said, has anybody told Lee?
Nope.
And she said, no, we haven't talked to him. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to get back to this hospital before anybody comes in that room, because if anyone's going to tell this information to him, I want it to be me. I need it to be me. So I got in to the hospital and I said, Lee, has anybody been in? He said, no. I said, well, I have some things to tell you. Your doctors have called me. And he said, okay. And I told him everything I knew. And gosh, I'm so glad the girls didn't want another refill, because 10 minutes later, the neurosurgeon was in there and he goes, here's what we're going to do. You have melanoma of the brain and the lymph node. And I was like, oh, glad I made it.
From what I remember, it was as soon as you finished talking and you said, what do you think? And I was like, I have no idea. They walked in and hit me with a whole nother thing, and I hadn't even processed.
It was so fast.
I hadn't even processed what you told me yet.
But I'm glad that I got there in time, because if you would have found that out by yourself,
yeah,
that would have been scary. That was scary for me to hear it in the car. Not alone, scary.
I don't know that it would have sunk in what they were telling me, because majority of what happened, everything had to go through you to get to me, because it didn't sink in what they were saying to me.
Yeah.
And so at that point it was, okay, what do we got to do now?
Okay, so now we're looking at radiation and brain surgery and healing from that before we could even start dealing with cancer overall. We just had to deal with your brain tumor.
So this is all within a day of, we go into the ER, everything we find out the next day, and they kept me in the hospital and ran some more. We ran an MRI. We
ran a lot of tests.
And I remember the one lady, they moved me to a birthing room.
It was an unused birthing room.
Because they needed the space.
Yeah.
In the ER, so they moved us up to this birthing room.
It was quite a nice room.
It was, and that one nurse we had, bless her heart, she was
Keisha.
Was that her name?
I think her name was Keisha.
She was a nice lady, but she would come in. We just gave each other static back and forth, and I remember her giving me that one contrast medicine for the MRI, and she's like, "Now you have an hour to drink this," and I said, "Sit still." She said, "What?" And it was like a quart-sized jar, and I just downed it.
Mm-hmm.
I said, "By the time you hit that door, I'll be done with it." She's like, "Nuh-uh," and she stood there, and it was gone. I downed it like I used to drink beer, and she was like, "I've never in my life seen anybody chug contrast."
I said, "Well, welcome to this crazy life we live."
I said, "Now can I get in there earlier?" She said, "No, it's still going to take an hour." I said, "Well, if you tell me it's going to be nasty, why do I want to sip on it?"
All I remember from that room really is hiding out in the bathroom to make all the phone calls of your family who was checking in, letting the family know.
And you had the little couch thing that you sat on, took a nap.
I took a nap in there, but I hid in the bathroom, and I don't know why.
Yeah, because she knocked when
the doctors. So the bathroom was like it's my safety spot. If I'm upset, that's always where I go. I do it still. I did it prior. So I made the phone calls in the bathroom. And there was a knock on the door the one time, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, who is in this room?" And it was the nurse. And she said, "I thought you might want to come out here. The neurosurgeon's out here with his partner. And your husband just told them it was like the year of 2000 or something ridiculous."
Yeah, because he was like, "What year is it?" And I was like, "I don't know, 2001, 11?" And he goes, "What?"
Oh my gosh. And I looked at him and I said, "Lee, will you stop messing around? What year is it?" He goes, "Oh, it's 2021, babe." "Thank you. Can you just tell the doctor that?"
Yeah, because the nurse knew that I was, cognitively, I was out of it. I was space cadet, certified, everything.
So during this time, we met all your doctors, except for your oncologist. Like we met, and I will give it to this hospital, to this team of doctors, they were all super complimentary of each other. They knew of each other's work. They knew of each other's research. They knew how they practiced. They knew what to expect from them. And given that this was completely new terrain, that was kind of comforting.
What we didn't know was the team of this team that we're being introduced to were top in the nation, and
for this type of cancer treatment,
for revolutionizing this type of immunotherapy and treatment stuff that we're about to embark on.
Yeah, they set the standard of care for how you treat this. And, fast forward a little bit, I'm on some cancer caregiver support groups and things like that. And I'm hearing horror stories from people who have this same type of cancer. It's in the brain, and they're not doing the same medicines or the same systems. Like, they're doing this before radiation and radiation after this and not before, and they're having really bad outcomes. And I guess it made me feel even more happy that we got the team we did with the knowledge that they had and with the right plan.
So that got us up to, I went home like August 20th.
21st. Well, and in this time, I was like, oh crap. All right. And he wasn't thinking this, but I was like, oh crap. Like, you're the one who makes our money.
Yep.
You can't work. So I called I called the oncologist, or when she was in there, I said, hey, should he go back to work? Should we file for something? Should we get disability? I don't know what to do, because they don't tell you all that. And because we've never dealt with it, we didn't know all of that. And she said, yes, dear. She was very sweet, like a mom. She's like, yes, dear. You need to call and ask for short-term disability. You need to send the paperwork to my office, and I will have that filled out. If any of the other doctors need to fill it out, I would forward that information to them, because we all work together, and we will get this handled for you. I said, so I need to do that tomorrow? She said, yes. I said, oh, okay. Oh, okay, we'll do that. Well, he wasn't thinking logically. And so calling them, they wanted to talk to him, and I'm like, oh dear gosh, this isn't going to go swell. I'm like, can he just give me permission to talk for him?
Because if anybody knows anything about calling the insurance, if you're not the person, they don't want to talk to you. So then you have to give them permission to talk to your spouse. And, I'm just like, hello, yes, that's fine. Yeah, she's my wife.
And truly, that's no exaggeration. That's really how the phone call went.
Yeah, it was terrible.
I mean, I'm glad we had it. I'm glad that somebody told me to do it, and I had an inkling to ask about that thing. Ugh.
And then it's, we had to do the, fill out. I had to call work and tell them what was going on, because they were wondering, because I hadn't been to work in a couple of days. They knew I'd went to the hospital, and we kept in touch with a couple of supervisors. And, once we got home and everything was we're in the middle of scheduling the, when the radiation was going to happen. Because when they do the radiation, well, I'll save that for next segment.
Well, we can finish with this part. Like, when they do radiation, they have to do it within 14 days of the last scan, or else they had to recomplete the scans.
Yep.
So we got sent home knowing that our last scans were on the 21st or 22nd of August, and given that we needed 2 weeks, we knew that by the end of this day, they had to be 10 days. It might have been 10 days instead of 14.
It was 2 weeks.
Yeah. But they had a date, and they said by this time, you will have your surgery. It could be next week. It could be the beginning of the week after, but it's going to be by this date.
Yep.
So we don't have to redo your scans. So we waited for the call, and then we got the call one day. Hey, it was like a Tuesday or a Wednesday, and they're like, okay, well, his radiation therapy is going to start on Friday. He needs to be here Friday. We'll do Friday, Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, Friday, and Monday, and his surgery will be on Tuesday.
Something like that, yeah.
And we're like, oh, okay, let's go. We got it.
Yep. So in the background, at this point we already filed for short-term disability, and I'd notified the job that what was going on, and they were all like, hey, this is uncharted territory for us too. So, whatever time you need, you're good. If you need anything, let us know. And that was kind of it. So
we let our family know. We told the kids. Your dad came down. My sister called. She was on standby to come down.
And that's one of the hardest things for somebody who's completely zoned out, is somebody asking you what you want them to do. Because I have no clue.
Well, and it wasn't just you. Like, people were like, what do you need? I don't know what I need. Well, there has to be something you need. I don't know.
We've never done this, so I don't know. And
I was just trying to keep one foot in front of the other, and keep you taking all your medicines, and keeping the girls doing what they had to do, and trying to keep things light in the house as much as you can keep things light in the house. I don't know what we need, but thank you for asking to help us. I just don't know what that is.
And a lot of, and my response was kind of, I'm spaced out, so my response was, whatever you think you can live with, that's what you need to do. Because if something happens and I die, you've got to live with whatever happened that you did or didn't do.
Right.
And that was a little rough for a couple people, but I was like, bottom line is, if you come down or you do this or do that, if I die, then you have to be able to live with, I should have done this, or I did enough. It's not up for me to say what I need, because I don't know. Because
right.
Bottom line, I'm out of it. I won't even probably know you're there. I mean, I'll know you're there, but we're not going to go play golf or go fishing.
Funny you say golf. You haven't golfed in 20 years.
But we're not going to go do stuff. I'm going to sit around like a vegetable, and that's what I was doing. But I would know you're there. My dad come down. He just hung out with me, and we watched Gunsmoke and John Wayne movies. He couldn't
follow the plot, but he knew.
Yeah.
He knew it was a Western on TV.
Yeah. I mean, Marshall Dillon, you can't go wrong with that. But
that's debatable.
So that's a good introduction for.
It's a good introduction for today.
For today, yep. So.
And next time we'll pick up on preparing for surgery and
yep.
radiation
now,
and what that was like.
We'll write that down. I can't even spell it, but it's all right.
I got it.
We'll write down where we're at, and we'll come back, and it's been a journey, and I think we can get. We've met some very, very awesome people through our journey, with our journey.
Yeah.
And others who we'll get into in later episodes of going through it and calling and saying, hey, tell me what's going on. How do I do this? And that's part of what we want to share. So,
hey, welcome to 2023.
Yep. Happy 2023. It's going to be better than what 2021 was.
Hopefully you remember some of this one.
Yep, because 2022 is kind of a blur. So. But, all right, well, that's all we got today. And, well, love, let's get out of here.